Melanated family, back for another week. This is the last show of the week, family. Happy to be back for a brand new episode of the Melanated Convo podcast with my sister Sonia. Happy to be back, man. So hit that like button, subscribe to the show, become a member of the show. You know what I mean? I've enjoyed commenting with people on YouTube and different platforms when they have things to say about the show, bad or good. You know, as long as you're respectful, we can have a conversation. So I appreciate all the feedback I've been getting lately, man. So keep that up. Happy to be back. Me and my sister doing our show on Sunday this week. You feel me? But
because life be lifing.
But we gonna get it in before the week is over for sure. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So again, make sure everybody keeps supporting the Melanated State of Mind t-shirts. You know what I mean? I've been selling these t-shirts, the Melanated State of Mind t-shirt, the podcast t-shirt. Both are fire. Both come in several colors. Holla at your boy. If you want to order a t-shirt, you can go to melanatedconvopod at Gmail. That's the email where you can send me an email with your size and color. We ship to all 50 states. You can also hit me on Instagram, which is melanatedconvo100. That's my Instagram page where you can DM me your size and we can get everything popping. You feel me? So thank you. So back for another episode. We're going to get this thing going, man, with news stories like me and my sister always do. First thing I wanted to talk about with my sister real quick to get it out of the way. So Tupac, there's a new documentary coming out on Hulu. The first episode has been released already, but it's on Hulu. It's called Dear Mama, and it's a documentary about Tupac's relationship with his mother, right? Like, Sonia, I thought it was important to talk about this for a few reasons, because you have a story yourself we're gonna get into, but being like a very real big supporter of Tupac and a big fan of like how he approached everything. It was like a movie watching him live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, since he's died, though, it's almost become like a cottage industry of making content around how he died, who killed him, who he was involved with, who his friends was. You know what I mean? So it's been movies, it's been documentaries, a lot of information we've been able to consume over the past 20 some odd years since Tupac hasn't been there. But this documentary looks to take a different approach, like talking about his mom and his relationship with his mother. I'm going to watch the first episode tonight. But just looking at this, Sonia, because you mentioned to me that you actually had like a relationship with Tupac, right?
I did. My friends used to tease me all the time. My oldest son's biological father was a Bay Area producer of music. And so when Pac was doing his thing in Oakland and hanging out with Digital Underground, my son's father would oftentimes be producing some of that music, or at least giving them tracks for them to consider.
Yeah.
And I was in college at the time. And so I would come to the studio with my backpack filled with texts of college books. And he would always remind me, everybody don't get a chance from our predicament, from our circumstances, from our hood, Black folks. We don't all get the opportunity to go to college. So he would make sure whoever was in the room, when I stepped in the room, he'd be like, she getting a degree for all of us. I remember those conversations very emphatically. I can remember his love and appreciation for his mother. I met his mother on one occasion. I would hang out with his producer because she didn't believe that he was in the studio getting working.
Yeah.
But he really was. He wrote all of his raps. Like, he literally carried his notepad, his notebook with him everywhere. I would be I want to know who got those notebooks. Like, I want to know that they're in good hands, because those would be something that could be in a museum somewhere. And I know that there's a museum dedicated to his life. But he was very, very introspective. He was, as a true Gemini, he had the good and the bad side,
That's
where you can see it. Yeah. He loved people, but he loved Black people. Like, love.
And he showed us that. And that's wow. And that's interesting that I'm bringing up, talking about everybody. We're talking about Tupac's documentary, Dear Mama, that's coming out. That one episode has came out already, but it's on Hulu if you want to check it out. But that's interesting, Sonia, because I didn't know you had that experience. But that's, I think, one of the reasons why people still talk about Tupac to this day is
Absolutely.
because he touched every side of emotions.
Right.
Like he had the conscious shit, he had the gangster shit, he had the things about women, he had the introspective music. Like he literally touched all sides of the spectrum. And at any
Absolutely.
moment, he can give you any of those sides. You know what I mean? So
Any of them.
because I was just talking to somebody the other day, like, damn, it's been 25 years since Tupac been gone, with
Yes.
it 20, almost 30, and he's damn near still as relevant. Like when it comes
Very.
to media, and if you on social media, you're gonna see something with his face on it, something
Yeah.
pronouncing how he felt about things. So I'm excited to watch the documentary, and I'm speaking about it because it's about his mom. And
Yeah.
I've seen so many, because I was so interested in finding out how he died, like
Yeah.
who was behind it. You know what I mean? And at
Yeah.
this point, so if you go
Absolutely.
to YouTube, we talking about old managers, we talking about old bodyguards, everybody that was involved in that
Yes.
situation that's not dead. They on YouTube
They
saying
own this video.
they
And
on they on.
I mean, I got a chance this week to watch the first episode, and I told my folks, I was like, I gotta watch this by myself because I don't know how. Like I've seen stuff on Pac, and I've gotten very emotional. I've seen like Jada Pinkett Smith give an interview where she's tearing up, and just because she's talking about Pac
Mhm.
makes me tear up because I have a fond memory of that feeling that he just
Mm.
he left you with. And so watching it, it was like real life. It was so like real life. And I just was in a space. It was at a time we had. Okay, so let me just share this one little story. We would always have this debate about the word bitch. And
Mm.
his philosophy, like, get this, yeah. I mean, this is why I love him. He would be like, anybody could be a bitch, a nigga, or a hoe at any time. Like, we don't strive to be those things, but the conditions might make us those things.
Mhm.
He said, I never would want to consider my mama a bitch, but if she's out there in the streets doing things that are not conducive to my upbringing and being there to support me, in that moment, she could be a bitch. And so
Mm.
he would say, on this, he always remind me, on this day, sis, you ain't a bitch.
That's
And I would be
interesting.
on this day or all days. He said, I haven't met the bitch side of you, but I know she's in there. Because he knew where I was from. He knew
Yeah.
what hood, what block I grew up on. Like there was a time that we were sent out. He and I and another person. I don't even remember who this person is. I don't even know their name. But the audacity of me to get in the car with two men at this time. But I knew him, so I knew that I was okay. We were sent to go get food. Imagine Pac before he really made it. He was hanging out with Digital Underground. Their album hadn't dropped yet, so people hadn't made the
Mm.
connection yet. And they sent us three out to get food. And I'm like, I'm being sent out to get food with Tupac Shakur. Imagine that, right? And so as we were going to get food, we were going to Big Daddy's Fish in North Oakland. And we had debated, should we go to Big Daddy's or should we go to Flint's Barbecue? And we settled on Big Daddy's, which is North Oakland, Berkeley area. And so we get there, and we driving by, and I was like, that's my block. He said, you grew up right here? I said, yes, that's Bushrod. You don't want to be caught in that park after dark. Male, female, you don't want to be caught in that park, period. And he asked me questions about what it was like, because he grew up all over this. I
Mhm.
consider him like a person who grew up all over this country in several hoods: New York, Baltimore, Oakland, LA. But he got to see us, the best of us, and he got to see the worst of us,
Mm.
as a people, as a collective. And
Mhm.
so that's what I appreciate about him. He was inquisitive. He asked the best questions. Like, I just couldn't give him an answer about something and he'd be like, oh, okay, and just accept it. It was going to be another question and a follow-up question, and then I remembered that you said this, and he'd bring it back up again the next time. But he always, every
Yeah.
time he saw me, he reminded everybody in the room, she's getting a college degree for us. This is not you. And he would remind me, your degree is not just yours. This is your family's. This is your community's. And I think
Mm.
that is something that I really and truly, when I came back to Meadowview to do this work, I was like, I have to, because what I've been able to accomplish and achieve in life is not just mine. It has to
Mm.
be ours as a community. Pac taught me that.
Mm-hmm. That's damn, Sonia. So that's interesting because I've heard a lot about how being in the room with him was. I've also heard a lot about his introspective side. Like when we look at the death row period, because some people aren't really aware of the fact that from him being bailed out to go on death row to his death, that was like 9 months. This
Yes.
wasn't a long period of time at all.
No.
You know what I mean? So a lot of people speak about his introspection and
Yeah.
the gangster. Like you didn't really see that. This is an art student and went to an artistic school.
Yes.
Very, very intelligent brother, but he had all sides to him, like you said.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, Sonia, and that's crazy because, like you said, that was before everything, right? That was before his first
everything.
record.
He had just written Brenda's Got a Baby. His first album had already come out, but it at the time the traction wasn't there yet. Like we knew coming from Oakland, we was like, you the dude. We passed you the one next one that gets the torch. Like carry this mantle and carried it well. And when he got in trouble, I was like, ain't no way on God's green earth that he didn't rape anybody. Like telling a woman that he gonna take, no, there's no way. I just was like in my heart, my mind, just I was so crushed that this system sitting back, knowing him personally, watching him go through that, it was so challenging. And that I couldn't imagine what his mother was going through. I couldn't imagine what his sister was going through, because he might call you a bitch or a hoe, but he gonna call you a bitch or a hoe to your face. And he's going to give you reasons that he feels this way, but he's never going to be disrespectful in a way that is going to cause harm to any woman, especially a Black woman. So that was a hard time for me to understand. And then it was even harder when he was bailed out by death row. I was like, oh, hell, this is going to be horrible. And then for him to die so quickly, like you said, it was a short period of time. And I think that I had a lot of people who knew him personally. The shock of it, like for a long time, I was like, that ain't him. But when I knew that he was dating, oh my goodness, the record producer, I can't call his name.
Shada Shakur. Or no, I'm sorry. Quincy
Jones's daughter.
Quincy Jones'
when
daughter.
I saw images of her at that hospital, I was like, this is real, y'all. This is really, really real, because I knew that he was dating her in real life.
Yeah, that's very interesting. R.I.P. to that brother. It just speaks to his greatness, because when Tupac died, I think I was 16 or 17 years old. And the gravity of who he was, I wasn't old enough to understand what I was witnessing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that he was only 25 years old. And we look at all the greatness from like the rappers and the hip hop artists that we consider the greatest now are accomplishing great things. But a lot of them, when Tupac was alive, we talking Nas, we talking Jay-Z, we got to keep it real. When Tupac was alive, they was secondary to him. Like he was way more polarizing than these figures, and he was more well-rounded than these individuals too. Like most 100%. Guys was just rapping, he was acting at a extraordinary level,
at a high level
before 90% of the music industry. You know what I mean? So Tupac is one of those figures that's going to continue to live on. But you know what? And before we wrap on the Tupac thing, Sonia, I'm just saddened by the fact that the music industry, hip hop specifically, hasn't learned from that incident. Like the two biggest artists in our culture died. It was personal things going on, but there was a beef created between them that was heightened by the media, heightened by everybody that was around, that ultimately landed them in the situation they end up in. And now seeing like all the rappers that die on a yearly or a quarterly basis, it saddens me that we don't learn from that, because if you don't learn from stuff, then you're not going to improve.
Right. You're doomed to repeat it. You're so doomed to repeat it. And I mean, going back to him being that double-sided Gemini that he was the pettiest sucker ever. Like He was gonna if you wronged him, he was gonna remind you every time that you saw him that he was so petty. So even though the beef that he had with Biggie was very much propaganda and very much fakely built by media and all the kind of stuff, he was still fucking petty, and he was gonna remind Biggie that this shit ain't really us. So I mean, I was never surprised at his responses to the beef, because he
I
knew
see
that
what
it
you're
was
saying.
propaganda.
I
Like,
see what
he
you're
was
saying.
like, are we really doing this? And so that was the petty side of him. And that's what I try to remind people, like, yeah, you saw him lash out. You saw him make raps that were diss raps, you know, the certain
Mhm.
people out there. But it really and truly was a call to the fact that this country, these systems systemically are designed to divide us. And are we doing this? Because if we doing this, I'm gonna be petty.
Yeah,
And that's what
that
he
makes sense.
reminded.
That makes a lot of sense, because
Yes.
there was rumors or information going around that when him and Biggie was going through their thing, he seen Biggie a few times,
Right.
and when he seen him, it was like wink wink. You know,
Right.
like, I mean, come on now. We just
Absolutely.
playing it up for the cameras, but you know, the unfortunate situation finally happened. So RIP to that brother, man. Everybody go out there
Yeah.
and watch the Dear Mama documentary on Hulu. First episode is out now. I think it's gonna come out
Yeah.
every week. I'm interested to see it. So moving on. Next thing we're gonna talk about, Sonia, in Oklahoma, right? There was an audio released in Oklahoma of like 4 city officials in Oklahoma who were caught on recording, basically talking about, because a couple of the journalists in that city was did some research and published articles that was going to get them indicted or get them in trouble.
Right.
Like they were speaking to the fact that their police department was doing things incorrectly. So the journalist was talking about it. They were bringing it up,
Yeah.
creating exposés about it. And they finally, and one of the journalists, which I'm not sure how I feel about somebody doing this, but they left like an audio recorder in one of the rooms after a meeting. And when they left the audio recorder, the sheriff and some other individuals had some horrible things to say about
Yeah.
not just black folks, but you know, those 2 journalists, as far as getting them killed or whatever. So I want to play a
Yeah.
quick video just to illustrate that, because you know, me and my sister Sonia talk a lot about what happened, like racist individuals and how they perceive us and all of these different things. So it's important that we shine a light on these things when we need to, and you know, the proof is in the pudding. So let's take
Absolutely.
a look real quickly here. Let's go, family.
To resign after a newspaper says they have recorded conversations with commissioners and the sheriff talking about killing journalists and hanging black people. Andy Weber with our affiliate in Oklahoma City has more.
I know where 2 big deep holes are here. We need them. I got an excavator. These are already pre-dug.
The McCurtain Gazette says that is audio of McCurtain County Commissioner Mark Jennings and Sheriff Kevin Clardy talking about killing 2 of the paper's reporters. The paper is currently suing the county over alleged Open Records Act violation. The threat seems to get more specific as Jennings talks with Sheriff's investigator Alicia Manning.
I know 2 or 3 hitmen that are very quiet guys. Yeah. And would cut no mercy. Yeah. In Louisiana, because it's all mafia around here. Oh, yeah.
The conversation between the officials eventually became racist, Commissioner Jennings complaining to Sheriff Clardy about not being able to kill or beat black people.
If it was back in the day, you take a damn black cat, whoop their and throw them in the cell, I'd run for sheriff. Yeah. Well, it's not like that no more. I know. Take them down here on Mud Creek and hang them up with the damn rope. Yeah. But you can't do that. The thing about it is, they got more rights than we got.
The mayor of Idabel, which is the county seat for McCurtain County, Craig Young, joining the governor in calling for resignations. Governor Stitt saying there is no place for such hateful rhetoric in the state. Stitt called on OSBI to investigate to determine whether anything illegal happened. The McCurtain Gazette chose to release only portions of the recording, but reports that the entire recording was sent to the FBI and the Attorney General's office.
This is an ongoing investigation that we've been looking at for several days.
And once again, that was our affiliate Andy Weber reporting. Now, McCurtain County commissioners met this morning, but Tulsa.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Sonia, so looking at a situation like this, right? Because we know, of course, how a lot of white folks feel about us, just to be honest.
Absolutely.
But it like the callous nature, because some people would say, for one, leaving a recorder in a private meeting and allowing it to record them, I'm not okay with that. Like if I didn't tell you to record me, or if I didn't okay it, I'm not okay with that. But sometimes people will think we looking at white folks making jokes, because they're making a joke about hiring a hitman to kill 2 journalists who are poking the bear, like bringing up shit they may be doing incorrectly. Then they go into talking about us as black folks. The reason why it's so serious to me, Sonia, because this shit ends up happening, right? We see incidents where white people be on some vigilante shit and they end up harming us or use their position of authority to harm us. So now it's not funny. That's why we have to highlight this, because I've never really seen the reverse. As much as we get treated with, like, as much disenfranchisement and other things we go through as black folks, I've never had a conversation with somebody black about just going out and killing white folks, going out and like jokingly, seriously, any of it. So Sonia, like, what do you make of continually seeing authority figures in our communities feel this way about us?
So we know that the machine called white supremacy is a machine. And I tell people all the time, we're all ALL, capital A, capital L, capital. We all have been conditioned to not only accept, but play a role in the perpetuation of white supremacy. And so it's, for me, it's the audacity piece. It's the, I recognize I have power, so I'm going to do this and you can't do nothing about it. It's the nah. I wish you would try to do something. It's the, I'll show up at your door with other folks who look like me, threatening you to do something about it. It's the, I will have you followed by police. It's the, you killed yourself response. It's all of those things. But at the core of it, it's the audacity, right? Because race plus power is how we find ourselves in these situations. It's how we find people who take advantage of the narrative that there is power in being white, that this structure, this false narrative, even though it's false, it's the audacity, right? It's the, we've gotten away with this for so long, and who's going to change it, right? And if y'all are going to change it and challenge the system, we gonna help divide y'all along the way. I mean, look at all of our movements. Look at them when we try to collaborate with other communities. When we try to collaborate with the LGBTQ plus community, with the Latinx, the Asian Pacific Islander, women's organizations trying to work with black folks. All of these collaboration efforts have failed us, not the other group. Right?
Oh, that makes sense.
And so not only is it the perpetuation of white supremacy, it is the long, deep-rooted, systemic anti-blackness that is like, it's not just me, people, because I'm a white person. But you know, you think that too, all of you who have proximities to whiteness, right? And remember, we've talked about this before. Proximities to whiteness does not always exclude black folks. People remind me all the time. Remember, like Pac said, you get that degree, it's for all of us. But it's still people in the hood who be like, oh, she got a degree, she didn't made it out. And so she has some proximities to whiteness. But I want to take advantage of the proximity that I do have to whiteness and flip that shit on its head and be like, no, we can't continue to do this. And here's the proof why. Here are people who look just like me who weren't afforded this opportunity or didn't make it out. So I'm never surprised. And I do agree with you. Being recorded without your knowledge or permission is 100% wrong. But at the same time, I know as a woman, I've been in situations where not only am I called crazy for being black, but I'm called crazy for being a woman. And I know that I oftentimes just need to find the proof. And so I can understand why a person would be like, I need this to happen. These kind of conversations were just had not too long ago also in Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles caught their city council making very racist, disparaging comments, right? And so again, now that we see it popping into the news, my expectation is that everybody is fair game. And I like it like that. And I mean, if you think about it from that perspective, that you better watch what you say, because you don't know whose company you keep
all day long. And these, like, the governor is trying to get the sheriff. The main person speaking was the actual sheriff. The other three individuals had other positions in his office, and they were kind of co-signing, but he was the main individual, and they're trying to get him to resign. And
yeah.
So I'm not sure of that process of the governor can't just fire him. I guess not. He's trying to get him to resign. But the problem that I think a lot of authority figures don't care to realize, or just don't see it, this mentality seeps into their work performance.
Yes.
This isn't a guy at Taco Bell who can just spit in your food. Like, he has the authority, and him saying they used to be able to hang black people, that whole rhetoric. We just talked about the Georgia trainer that was saying some of this same shit. So what we're looking at is a deep-rooted love for, like, the Confederate.
Yeah.
So you're like, for a lot of white folks who feel we deserve to be in a certain place in this country. And the bottom line is, as long as those type of individuals are in positions of power, even if it's a small position of power, it can negatively affect us. And as we see, it continues to happen. So legislation needs to be, I don't know what needs to happen, but something needs to take place where racism in certain types of job performance is not tolerated. Meaning, you go to jail, you lose your pension, you get fired, because that mentality breeds violence. That mentality breeds contempt. And all of a sudden they doing shit to us, and everybody's wondering why, and they're getting protected by the police union. But in actuality, they think we should be hanging on a tree.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other part of it is, when you have an individual like that coach down in Georgia, and, you know, thank God, knock on wood, knock on wood, he has been released of his duties with the university that he was working with. But the reality is, there aren't the safe checks that are in place. There aren't the checks and balances that are in place. And so here, just so that folks know, civically, anyone who's in an elected position, unless they are arrested and are in jail, they can't just be removed or fired. You have to have a special election to then have their position challenged. And that's a hard process. Like, we've tried it here in Sacramento, California with the DA recall. It's called a recall. And there's a special election for a recall. We've attempted to recall DA Schubert after the murder of Stephon Clark. We attempted to recall Sheriff Scott Jones. And we garnered a lot of people power and attention around the issues, so much so that they weren't reelected. But as far as recalling them out of the positions that they were elected to, it's hard to do that. And so maybe it's time, you know, one of my, for my business, Ascribe, we have a AAA approach to equity. First is acknowledging that racism is a thing that impacts us all. Two is auditing all policies, procedures, practices, principles, beliefs, and behaviors. Audit that shit. Like, really, let's look at this law. How does it impact everybody? And is it a good law? Because if it's not a good law, we need to rewrite it or eliminate it altogether. And so I think that a lot of progressive elected officials now are saying we need to do some of this auditing work. But the third A on our AAA approach to equity is the alignment piece. So we want to align it to make sure that the needs of the most marginalized, the most vulnerable in community, that their needs are taken care of to a higher degree. Because if you take care of the needs of the most vulnerable, you're taking care of everybody's needs.
Yep. And so when we look at, like, it's so troubling, because speaking that way freely, joking or being serious
or otherwise,
that's how you feel. So what have you been doing in your job function that reflects that mentality?
Yes.
Have you been targeting us? Have you been, because the journalist is just trying to get the real shit that's going on in your police department. for the most part. Like leaving the tape recorder, I don't agree with that. But
Right.
they were just trying to get the real, and you proved them right.
Absolutely.
You proved them right by your rhetoric, and that's what we need to realize in this country. When white folks get to talking about hanging niggas, when they get to talking about shooting niggas, somebody listening may just do it. You see, this is an actual mentality, and we as African people, whether you think you're Aboriginal or you African, our spirit as people is so we're not vengeful. We're not looking to get people back.
Right.
We don't have any groups of people that we feel should be just dead or removed from the planet or whatever, or treated a certain way. In actuality, we've been through things in this country that we could be jaded. We could be jaded. And a lot of us don't even operate that way. So the process needs to start where all elected officials, anybody that has the ability to affect the life of somebody else, there should be a very strenuous process to getting you elected. How you feel about people matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And this is a prime example of that, but it's important that we talk about it. Like the sheriff and these individuals, they need to be put on blast so people in that area can be aware, and hopefully whatever like social justice warriors we have in that area, man, y'all get to march and y'all get to protest. And I used to think, Sonia, because we marched and protested so much in the 60s and 70s, I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Shit. Let's stop it. But as I get older and I move along and everything I'm doing, I see all the pieces that are needed to get justice.
Yeah.
And the resistance piece is important.
Yeah, it's one of those things I tell folks all the time. Like, being out there on the front lines gives you a different perspective. But the reality is we need every spook who sat behind the door. We need the folks on the inside, on the outside, on the outskirts. The whole kitchen sink has to be thrown at this beast, because it is a beast. When I tell you, it is layered, so deeply rooted in this country's just everything about this country. And I mean, let's be real honest with ourselves. Because this country has propelled itself to being the #1 superpower in the world, that means that we influence every other country. So if America is anti-Black, we have to recognize that anti-Blackness is spread all across the globe. And so that's a part of the narrative. But in doing just activism work altogether, I remind people on a regular basis, like, be for real with yourself. Like, what are the outcomes that we're looking for? Because if we can articulate what the outcomes are, not just give me, $1 million in reparations, but explaining why and how do we come to this dollar amount, gives credence to, value to, importance to the journey that some people experience, and where the denied resources were, where the slammed doors were, where the injustice was. And so that's what I try to remind people. One of the biggest things that was like a thorn in my side, like one of my pet peeves while I was with Black Lives Matter, is that folks would always categorize us as single, uneducated Black women. And I will tell you firsthand that the chapter, and I've worked with chapters all over this country, but my chapter in Sacramento, we have PhDs. I would say 40% of us have had master's degrees. More than half of us had bachelor's degrees. You had mothers, you had grandmothers and aunties, you had married women. And even though the stereotype of who the angry Black woman is that she comes from the hood and she's inarticulate and uneducated, even those women were more passionate than the folks who are fighting the discomfort and the fear of eradicating racism and white supremacy.
That makes sense. People from all from all sides of the spectrum were there, and that sees for me. So, and that's why I'm everybody need to be keen on keeping an open mind and having a stance on something based on the information you have at the time.
Absolutely.
When new information is presented and you research it and you feel good about it or whatever, your argument has to change a little bit when new information is presented. That's why Black Lives Matter and marching, and I had a very venomous attitude toward these organizations as a whole without understanding. Sometimes you can have an organization that's doing things as a whole you may not like, but there are individuals. There are a lot of individuals involved with all of this, and a lot of the individuals are there for the right thing. So you're involved in a corporation that's corrupt, but you go to work every day and do your job and be honorable. I mean, is it your fault? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I love that. I love that analogy because that at the end of the day, that's what I tell people. Like, I mean, when we think about the policing system, right? We know what it's rooted in, but as long as there's one dirty cop amongst 100 dirty cops and 99 of y'all don't say shit to stop the one dirty cop, all y'all dirty. That's, everybody is dirty. All y'all's hands is dirty because you letting this one dirty cop spread throughout the ranks. And it does become norm, and it does become mental conditioning. And it is part of that belief and behavior that trickles over. And it's for some people, it is unconscious, right? Because we unconsciously had this conversation, and it was the norm that we have in this conversation, and bump the fact that it's being recorded. But the audacity to have this conversation, right, unconsciously or not, is the reality.
Yep. And that's what we deal with every day in this country. So we need to just continue to highlight things like people need to be courageous and speak up, because the systems that we have in place are built exactly the way they're supposed to be built.
Absolutely.
So all forms of disrupting this system for truth, understanding, love, all this shit that this country preach, but does not practice on a large scale. You know what I mean? So next thing we're gonna talk about basketball for a minute. Like we're gonna go in that vein. Sonia, the very popular and Hall of Fame retired head coach Phil Jackson. Now, Phil Jackson is a man who I think, if I'm not mistaken, has 11 rings. He's
adored
some of the best and most the best athletes, the best basketball players that we've had. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. He won a ring himself. You know what I mean? I think with the Bulls or somebody, or he, you know what I mean? So Phil Jackson is rooted in NBA culture, right? But here's the thing about white folks. Phil Jackson was just on a podcast, I think Rick Rubin's podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And they had a conversation about him watching basketball. Now, I didn't watch the whole interview, but from what I've been able to gather, they had a conversation about him watching basketball and how he felt about the NBA currently. He went in to say that he doesn't watch it currently. And what he highlighted, or was highlighted in this article, was the fact that he said during the bubble, once they went to the bubble, he didn't like the politics that was involved in the game. He did, and when politics, meaning, and he verbalized it, I didn't like the social justice slogans on the floor. I didn't like that the players had social justice slogans or their last name or whatever they were using at the time to represent what was going on with their community. He didn't like that. Now, just for clarity, if further on in the interview, if he clarified these statements, so be it. But from what I read, Sonia, I was extremely disappointed in this man, and it felt by what I read on some white supremacist shit. Like, so Phil Jackson's 11 championship rings were on the backs of Negroes. What can you leave politics out? That's a trick fucking bag. Anybody will say politics are involved in every form of human life. You can't remove them, right? So if 70% of your league who provide you the income if their community's going through something, you're going through something, right?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you take that on? So, because I was talking to my wife about, like, look, let me think, what if white folks were being brutalized, or the Holocaust was like 7 years ago, or some shit, you know what I mean? It was recent. And then they used, and all the players were Jewish, and they put stuff on their shirts or on the floor saying, hey, I'm represent my people. Stop what's going on. I would see it as an honor. Like, wow. I'm thinking the social justice symbolisms that was in the NBA were small, and you can kind of ignore them. I mean, it wasn't that prevalent. But to say, I didn't even want to see that shit. I couldn't watch the games because of it. it makes me look at him a little differently, Sonia.
Yeah. I get it for, those who are in comfortable positions. And we're talking about someone who is a legend in a industry, in a organization that has garnered not just a lot of success and accolades, but also earned a lot of money. And like you said, off the backs of Black folks.
Mm-hmm.
That discomfort that he felt, or continues to feel probably, is, I don't think that there is an ill will behind it. It's one of those things that white folks who have good relationships with Black and other folks, they know firsthand the goodness and human kindness of people who don't look like them. They also know the ugliness of people who look like themselves. And so they're stuck in the middle. And so I love having a conversation about like a Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is the epitome of the majority, unfortunately, the majority, not all, of white men in corporate and nonprofit and educational institutions. When I'm working with these organizations, those are the ones who are most resistant. Those are the ones who sit in my trainings and they're silent, and I can't read them. And so what my hope is in regards to Phil Jackson in particular is that he has a young person in his life that might be able to share a more progressive perspective around this issue. Because one of my philosophies and one of my tools in doing this work is that it's my job to provide you information and strategies to get out of a mindset, a culture that is laced in white supremacy. So I'm here to help you identify the people in the room who are truly the allies and believe in doing this work. Because they are, when I leave, they gonna check that racist shit at the door. They're gonna remind you of what a microaggression looks like. They're gonna remind you when you're sexist and when you make a comment at the water cooler. They're gonna remind you that was very biased when we did this hiring process, because we heard the name, and I'm gonna use my son Malik's name, because when he turned 16 and was time for him to get a job, he put his name on job application after application, and no one ever called him back. And so I asked him, I said, do you think it's, racist? He said, I think that people read my name, Malik Lewis, and they just don't call me back because they think I'm a Black guy. And so I challenged him one day. I said, let's try. I said, he was taking Spanish at the time. And in Spanish, if you're familiar, sometimes the teacher gives you a Spanish name just so that you can, enunciate words in Spanish more. So his name in his Spanish class was Mateo. Okay. And so I said, well, let's introduce the world to Mateo Lewis.
Oh, and see what the change is.
So, right. And so he submitted applications, maybe about 7 of them. These were brand new applications to places that he had applied to as Malik Lewis. He got phone calls back. He got one interview as Mateo Lewis, and the guy was ready to offer him the job. He said, I've never met and again, this goes back to how we've been conditioned to reply to things, right?
Yeah.
I've never met a Black person named Mateo. And so my son didn't have, the tools, the articulation to say, hey, that's a little racist that you said that.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can't assume someone is a certain race based on their name. When it was time to go and fill out the paperwork, he said, what my son then tells him, he brings in his birth certificate and his social security card. And he said, the guy says, your name's Malik on here. He says, yeah, but my friends call me Mateo.
that's funny right there.
This is his real experience.
Yep. This happens a lot.
It took him a long time to build his resume. Like, he was like, Mom, I can't quit this job, because if I quit this job, it's not going to look good on my resume that I only had it for a little bit of time. And then they're going to default back to my name's Malik and I must be a Black guy. Yeah. So, he works really, really hard at being that. You know how we are? We got to be the best in the room, because if we're not the best in the room, they going to remind us of what we're lacking. And then we're going to be the first to be fired.
Yeah.
So
and we get reminded that a lot. Yep.
a lot. So he's learning that. He's 22 now, but he's learning that. And it's not fair. It's not fair to assume that anyone is any particular thing just because of what our experiences have been. And so I have mixed feelings about Phil Jackson in particular with respects to this story. But I would say, if I ever had an opportunity to have a conversation with Phil, is discomfort. As a coach, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that discomfort is the breeding ground for growth.
All day long.
And if you're uncomfortable, like, remember them when we did them suicide drills the first time, the pain in your legs. And I can tell you myself, because I played basketball competitively in high school, and I attempted in college, but I hated suicides. I hated them. Harrison, to this day, Coach Jackson, who was my coach over at Burbank, to this day, when he is anywhere on my page, on my social media, I'd be like, I'll never do another suicide. I don't care what you say. He said, if I was on my sick bed, I said, yeah, Coach Jackson, I'm going to do some suicides for you.
Funny. That's
but
funny.
The pain and discomfort that suicide, I felt it from my shoulders all the way to my ankles.
And it was necessary to get the job done. You see what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
I'm not going to, the statements he said, because we're talking about Phil Jackson, was on a podcast, and he basically said the social justice movement in the NBA during the bubble made him uncomfortable. It made him not want to watch the games because of the display of what he called politics. But in reality, in my opinion, it was just expressing what the people on your team, the communities on your team, the families of the members of your team are going through. So it's a little tone deaf, and like I said, I don't know if further in the interview he clarified it and brought it back around in a particular way. But that just bothered me, Sonia, because if you spend all this time around Black people, there should be a level of empathy for everything, not just like the little personal stuff we got going on in our life. But if you're talking to us, you'll see a lot of us come from environments in situations that was difficult, and there was no funding and disenfranchisement. You have to come to grips with that if you're around us so much, and especially him, because look, Phil Jackson get the cloak as being like the Zen master, right? Like knowing how to center shit and basically get to the clarity of said situation. So this was a little disheartening, because I'm tired of white men and women, but white men specifically, being around Black folks and still having these ill views about us, like in totality. But you can train me. You can coach me. You can work with me. See, that integration shit, I don't know how well that's helped us, because now that we're integrated, we just lie. Now that we're integrated, we just do what we need to do to be around each other, and then go back home and keep those same views. So hopefully Phil Jackson clarifies that, because everything about him I've seen seemed like a pretty cool white dude, but don't they always? Shit, you know what I mean? So last thing we're gonna talk about before we get out of here, and this is funny to me, but in the position I'm in and what I do, this is very important to talk about. So Cardi B is suing vlogger Tasha K. Now, if any of you don't know Tasha K, she has, to give the sister her props, she's built a very popular platform. I think it's called Sipping Wine with Tasha K, something along those lines. But I'm in this game, so I'm not a fan of the content, but visually how it looks, the presentation, she's doing a lot of things right. But Cardi B sued her because on her show, she has a show where she talks about celebrity news and gossip while drinking wine, all this shit. She mentioned how Cardi B was a hoe. She was on drugs. Her baby was by a different man, not Offset. So what happened was, you go on your platform and you speak your piece and say whatever you want to say. Excuse me. This is actually dangerous, family. Now, I'm aware that I can be much more popular if I became extremely salacious, but I can't do it. I talk about
Yeah.
racism and white supremacy because that's what's true to me. And when we do shit as black folks, I talk about that. But using a person, and I try not to ever do this, using a person and calling them out while accusing them of things about them personally. You see, because we can comment on what people show us publicly. If you're a celebrity and you show us something publicly, you can say, hey, I've seen this publicly. This is my opinion on that. But Tasha K, because I talked about this story when it first happened, because now she's being sued by Cardi B, and now Cardi B has the right to take her house. She owe her like $4 million.
$4 million.
Haven't paid her. The court said, okay, go after her property, go after her assets. And Tasha K is a black woman, so I don't want to see the downfall of a black woman. But man, Sonia, you got to watch what you're saying out here.
You do. And I am famous in my family and my circle of friends for saying I said what I said and I meant what I said. At the same time, we have to take accountability, especially if we're putting out erroneous false information. Like that literally is a thing. I often, try to help people understand when we're talking, this is a communication thing, right? Because Tasha K is in a position of communicating. People are coming to you as a resource, hopefully that you've vetted, that you've researched, and done enough homework around whatever it is that you're reporting on. And it is a slippery slope for journalists, for anyone who's reporting on anyone else's lives, to do their due diligence and tell the truth. And so, I'm happy for, which traditionally would be that Cardi B is in a position of the little guy, right? Because typically journalists and folks who are reporting the news are backed by media, the power of the media, right?
Yeah. And
so they have an organization that's typically behind them. But now we are in a position where, no, Cardi, even if she's a famous celebrity, you tarnish my name, you slander my name. We got to get some get back. And I'm glad that she got the get back, because we know that Cardi can get back in other kind of ways, because there are a lot of, legal suits that are against her. But we have to also, I think, be in our love for one another as Black folks. Just be really super cognizant of how we look when we are reporting these stories. It's so unfortunate that this is 2 Black women and that there's a potential that you're going to lose your house. I don't know if Tasha has kids. I don't know if she takes care of a family and all that kind of stuff. But, we also know that you have built and garnered a platform and a backing of people who obviously sees value in what you do and what you report. And you getting paid, right? You getting paid like Cardi getting paid. And so you can make that money all over again. But for a lay person like myself, like yourself, starting out, I think it gives credence to us doing an extra job of being on our toes when it comes to, did we say the right thing, and acknowledging when we don't, because that's part of being human as well. Like, I'm sorry I said this, or I'm sorry you felt this. How can I do something different? And when I learned and discovered the truth, did I come back? Like, I think that she could have warded off this entire lawsuit had she come back and just did another piece on Cardi. Whether she likes her or not. She don't want to be a fan, but you got to come back and you got to tell the truth. So
that's very true. And I think also what happens sometimes, Sonia, because this is a beautiful thing where individuals not involved with corporations, not in nobody's pocket, can get on the internet and create whatever they want to create. This is a gold rush in our time in this country. Like, this is a beautiful thing. But also, the flip side to that is because there's no checks and balances, there's nobody to check you. People get in their house or their studio and think, I can literally say whatever the fuck I want to say about anybody, and it'll be cool. And then sometimes people see the salacious nature of my content brings followers and brings eyes to me, and I have to, I'm not I'm not with that. I'm gonna take the stairs then. I'm gonna do it slower then. I'm gonna figure out a way to get it like this because I don't want that kind of attention. That's negative attention. If you breed negativity, some negative shit might come your way. And I think another reason I'm bringing this up is for all bloggers, like YouTube makers, like anybody on camera talking. Be cognizant, man. Speak your truth. Like, speak your truth. But to take an individual and drag them, if you see them do something public and you say, I don't like it, this is what I think about it, that's your right as an individual in this country.
Yeah.
But to slander somebody, to continue, and I was reading, she kept doing it. It wasn't like one show that she made about Cardi B. It was ongoing, you know? And sometimes, Sonia, I would like to ask anybody that makes content. Sometimes I watch it and I'm thinking, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to show me? Is it, if you say it's purely entertainment, then cool. We just here for shits and giggles. I get it. But sometimes I'm watching like, damn, what point are you trying to make by dragging this individual? Because just like we mentioned a little earlier, Tasha K, that's why I get that sister her respect, because she built a platform and she can have kids, mama and them depending on her. We know how it feels to be Black in America. All respect to her in that regard. But so does Cardi B.
Right.
She got a family. She got people watching what you say about her online. So you like that's an expensive check to cash right there. Like you literally signing checks your ass can't cash. You see? So I don't want to see that sister go broke or her platform bottom up, but you have to be right. And she, through the process, she was a little petty. Like, yes, she did apologize and say, hey, Cardi B and your family, I apologize, but she did it in a kind of a petty way, and then she was kind of flossing like, haha, I ain't got it. So you kept poking. You know what I mean? That's not cool. I would say call her. I would have been moralized. I would have called her. Hey, let me get on the phone. Somebody give me her number. Sister, I'm sorry. This is what I heard. This is what I thought. I'm sorry. Come on my show and ask Black women, let's fix it. Because I'm aware of the sides of YouTube. I know sometimes people do not want to think. I've been drinking. I'm chilling. Let me put on some shit just to laugh. Cool.
Right.
But the people doing this content, you still have to be responsible. You know what I mean? You still have to be responsible because you're talking about real people's lives. That's why when I look at the celebrity gossip, I'm always deliberating about what to bring up on this show.
Right.
And I'm seeing celebrity gossip, who got married, who got some things. I'm like, okay, I know where we're at in society, but that's none of my damn business. That right there is none of my business. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm glad that Tasha K decided to fight back and appeal the judgment, because at the end of the day, if we don't know the process, if we don't know the full extent of how the law can protect us, the law will continue to not protect us. And so I'm glad that the judge's decision was upheld. And that Cardi will get some semblance, not all, you never be, whole from anything that happens to you, but she'll get some semblance of justice with respects to this issue. This is not a case of big bank take little bank, right? Because we're talking about two successful women. It's unfortunate because the impact that both of them could potentially have in Black communities all over the world that look like where they came from. That's what we could be focusing on. And I'm 100% okay with somebody not liking me. But you don't get to tarnish my name. You don't get to mar my character. You don't get to challenge my integrity. If I show up exhibiting integrity, if I show up and my character is of a high standard, if I show up and my name ain't dirt out there in these streets, you cannot like me, but you can't change those other things about me. So let the facts lead us before our feelings defeat us.
Oh, facts lead us. Our feelings defeat us. That's powerful right there, because that happens a lot, not just in like the media atmosphere, but just in life that happens to people. So that's powerful. So on that note, thank you everybody for tuning into a brand new episode of the Melanated Convo podcast, man. Me and my sister Sonia Williams Lewis. Don't forget to get those shirts. You want the Melanated State of Mind shirt, you want the podcast shirts, go to Melanated Convo 100 Melanated Convo 100 on Instagram. Melanated Convo Pod is at Gmail. Is the Gmail account. Send me a DM. Let me know your size, the color you want. I can send you out all the information I have. Let's do business. Continue to support your boy. So I'm going to tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me at Ascribe Success. That's ASCRIBE success.com. Hit us up. We will definitely help you out.
There we go. There we go. Because my sister has a great business where she kind of does what we're doing right now. But she does it for businesses. She go in there and say, you know what? Here are your blind spots. So I was very intrigued by her business. That's why I bring it up so much, because she talking at how she walk it. You know what I mean? And I definitely appreciate that. This is your brother Harrison, man. Follow me on Instagram at Melanated Convo 100. These conversations are important. We're going to continue to have them. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Melanated Convo podcast.